Hey, welcome to my channel where I talk about dolls, and that's literally it. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing all the American Girl named Black characters because by the time I upload this video, it's going to be February 1st, which is the beginning of Black History Month, in North America at least, as far as I know. And I'm going to be sharing them in order of release rather than chronological order story-wise for selfish reasons. That way I get to start off strong and then save the best for last. And I'm sure you know who that is. I'm mostly going to be talking about the dolls, maybe a little bit about their collections, and touch lightly on their stories or their legacy, let's say, mostly because there are 7 characters to go over, and I want to keep this a little bit concise. And as I said, I'm going to be starting out strong with Addy, so let me go grab her. Okay, so here she is, times 4. Not every segment is going to, or every character is going to have so much on screen to take in. But the thing about Addy is she's very special for a lot of reasons. And for one thing, she was the first American Girl doll to get her own mold, her own sculpt. Before that, there was only one sculpt for the 3 girls who came out. And it was obviously to be respectful of her having ethnically accurate features. I can't say that these dolls look human, like they don't look realistic, but obviously they weren't going to give her the sort of like pointier, smaller features of the classic mold. And one thing I want to say whenever I'm talking about American Girl, I should really preface by just saying to anyone out there who happens to stumble across a video and they're jarred by the way the dolls look, they do take some getting used to. For one thing, they're very big, and big dolls just have a little bit more of a creepy factor to them. And not all dolls show 2 buck teeth, basically, because they only have those. All the molds that have open mouths only have the 2 teeth, so that can be, it's something you have to get used to. And so I'm saying that because when I first saw the American Girl dolls in general, I didn't really love any of their faces. I had to get used to them, and Addy was no exception, to be honest. And so as I got more and more into American Girl, Addy ended up growing on me to become one of my most favorite molds. And so now I'm going to speak about it as somebody who loves the mold, who has adjusted. And if you are not used to American Girl dolls, I'm just not going to make any sense to you. But the thing I have to say about the Addy mold is there's something very grand about it. Something about the features. She just got, I'm going to bring the Pleasant Company. This is the original doll, the way the dolls started out. So there'll be things that were improved with the Be Forever Girl over at the other end, and most things about this doll are actually a lot better. So for one thing, they used a different vinyl when they were creating the dolls, when Pleasant Company was producing them. So she's very soft. Like her vinyl feels, compared to the Mattel dolls, almost more lifelike. And it's, she's not as hard. Like you can squish her arms and limbs like that. But to talk more about her features, she has very, like the nose, everything about her just, like I said, feels very grand, especially compared to some of the other molds. She just got a very sweet and almost like a little lady kind of appearance about her. So for me, it's one of the most versatile molds as far as you can put her in different looks. Sometimes this mold is modernized and she looks very modern, and obviously put her like this and she's just going to look like something very doll-wise, something very antique and expensive. I feel like the Addy mold and the Addy dolls, and when I look around my collection, something about her feels the most expensive. Maybe it's because I'm Canadian, and to get Addy stuff on the secondary market, she is expensive, but I don't know. I just think there's something about her that feels very elevated. And so I probably should have said that she takes place in the 1860s. So that's where all her fashion would have been around that era. And so she started out with having these sort of fake leather boots that would have been probably more realistic for the time. And then when the Be Forever doll came out, they switched to canvas. And so the thing that I think was improved between the PC Addy and then the Be Forever Addy is, I don't know, because if you look at the doll, I'm going to bring that up. This is the latest release of Addy in her meat outfit. So this was the original version you got of Addy, outfit-wise. And if you look at her eyebrows, I think we call them the arch eyebrows. I call them pencil eyebrows because they're so thin. And I just don't think they're very accurate to what a child would have, especially if you were looking at the era they came from. So Be Forever Addy, even though I think most people would prefer the older Addy, the thing about Be Forever Addy is she has more believable eyebrows, let's say. And I think that really it changes her face. It makes her features look a lot, to me, like that whole, where she looks innocent, but also like a little lady. Like, and I'll get into a little bit later, but she's while she's maintained her childlike character, she's seen some stuff, you know what I mean? So she looks like cute and wise at the same time. And maybe I'm reaching, and it's because I do know a little bit about the character because I've read her book that I feel that way. But I just, Addy has one of the greatest collections, one of the greatest faces, as I've already said. And as I mentioned, Be Forever Addy. So these outfits here are the Be Forever outfits, and then these would have been Pleasant Company, so these would have been more original. And therefore, I think these ones would be a lot more era accurate, but I'm not an expert on all that kind of stuff. I just know what I like as far as outfits go and what I want to put on a shelf and admire. And so that's why I have these two Be Forever outfits, which to me are just very beautiful and very, probably not as era accurate as everything else in her collection pre Be Forever. And to talk a little bit more about her story or her legacy, is there are a lot of opinions about her book and how her story takes place, because as I said, it takes place in the 1860s America. So she starts out in North Carolina, and she's going to reunite with her family in Philadelphia. And because it's 1860s North Carolina, she's escaping slavery with her mom. And the thing about that, why there are different opinions about it. And before I talk about the opinions, I just have to say all opinions are valid because they exist. So, people feel the way they feel, and there's no one's right or wrong. But some of the takeaways I've had from just gleaning what I hear online, and as somebody who's only been collecting for a handful of years, is on the one hand, it's a real part of American history. And so it's hard to pretend it didn't exist. So you can't have historically accurate books. That's what one of these dolls is, to tell the stories of American history. But on the other hand, it seems to be a story that's told a lot when it comes to Black history. And some people, even people that I've spoken to as adults, they wish that this wasn't always what we focus on when it comes to Black history. And we'll talk about, when I get to other characters, it does go into a little bit more to Black excellence and other kinds of experiences rather than just human slavery or enslavement. And so I've heard that as being one side of the feeling, where it's like it doesn't always have to be this particular story. And I've also heard that it's also a good thing to tell stories about this because it did exist, and we don't always talk about it, especially with children, particularly non-Black children. So some people feel that it's good that this is a way to make it more, I don't want to say palatable, because it's not a palatable story at all, but it makes it gives more wide of an audience for a story like this, where kids, it should, and I'm not speaking with my own experience here, obviously, look at me, but I've had, friends who have said it shouldn't only be Black kids who know about these things and have to learn about these things growing up, and that non-Black kids should be protected from it. If I'm again speaking for out of my experience, so I may be saying that a little wrong. And so I think those are the two, really, to me, opposite. I feel like those are the opposite feelings, that it's too much trauma. And keep in mind that a lot of American Girl stories, particularly with the older books, they do deal a lot with trauma. Obviously not going to be the same trauma as each other, because the dolls have very different backgrounds. But some people just feel it doesn't always have to be this trauma that's focused on, and some people feel that's a good way to make it a more known topic for all people to read. And the one thing I want to say about the story is, I haven't read a lot of the American Girl books. This is one of the books I've read, and when I say enjoyed it, I mean it was well written, it was engaging, it was captivating, and a funny side story, just to, I hope, drive a little bit more of a point about how it was a very engaging, well-told story, and an important story, is I was in the middle of reading it. I don't even remember how far I got into it, just a few chapters, and I put it down on my table, and then one day I could not find it. I went to pick it up to continue the story, and it was just gone. And I don't know how many days later it was, my partner, and I have to explain his background too in a minute, but he was like, "Hey, have you ever read the books that come with these dolls? Because I found this one here," and he pulls out, the Be Forever version, but this is her story, the Meet Addy story. He's like, "Because I found this book sitting on your table, and I've been reading it. It's actually really good. You should read them." And I was like, "I was reading it, and then you took it, and I didn't know where it went." Because this is before I had this version of the book, or maybe I didn't want to crack it open because it's not the Be Forever version. And the reason I want to tell that story is because my partner he only moved to, like I said, I'm in Canada. He only moved here from India 6 years ago. So this is not something that people in every country know about. That's not when they think of Black people or even Americans, they don't really know. They probably have heard little, in pop culture, maybe they might have heard something, but they wouldn't, people wouldn't always know the depths of stories like this. And so for him, he said he learned a lot by reading it, and it opened up his mind as someone who, like I said, came from a country where he had no idea of the depths of this. So that to me is another good side of the story and that's where I'm saying it's palatable. And I hate saying that word. It's bad to use that word because of what I'm talking about. But I just think these stories can exist in a way that is accessible. That's the word I should use. It's more accessible. And so I think to me, that's what the good thing is about the story being what it is. And luckily, it's not the last she's not the last, she's the first, but not the last Black historical character we got. And I don't know what else. Her collection's beautiful. That's another thing about Addy that I want to talk about. Jumping tracks here. But I don't have much of it. I'm saying luckily I got into collecting American Girl late, because I just think if everything was as available as some other characters, I would probably have too much of it, and I have so much of everything that it would just be another character whose collection I would want to, stock up on. And so that's why I always say I'm grateful that they haven't brought much of her stuff back, because if they did, while I was heavy into collecting American Girl, I don't know what I would have done. But maybe some of the outfits I would have been happy to buy, just because you can change your outfits, even though I hate changing her outfits. That's why I have 4 of her, because it's like every time I get an outfit I love, I want to find a doll for it. So I don't know if I didn't mention that this is the 35th anniversary Addy. So she was released, I guess it would have been 9 years ago now. Am I doing the math right? Yeah, 9 years. It would have been 2016. That's math. 86. Huh. So would she have been released that time? Because wouldn't her anniversary? Wow, I'm just thinking about that, because she came out in 1993. I don't even know if I said that, but yeah. So I don't know but she was a 35th anniversary doll, right? I am doing the math. But she's wearing the most recent version of the birthday suit and snood, because the older version that I did have, that I bought with her secondary market, it was stretched out and it didn't really sit nice and hold her hair very nicely. So that's why I have the newer version on the older version of the doll. And if you're looking at them, I'm peeking at them on the monitor, they all have very different skin tones, and it's maybe different batches or just different techniques for producing them, manufacturing them, as time has gone on. And another thing that I can't believe I haven't talked about, even though I talk about it every time I talk about Addy, I don't have anyone I can show because her hair is all done up. But the beautiful thing about this doll is she has long textured hair. All I can do is show you the back of her braid, maybe. Because I have collected many dolls, different types of dolls throughout my life, and Black dolls too. And I never had any dolls with textured hair. So my first time experiencing, I think that my first time realizing is a doll I'll talk about later. But that's one of the things that I don't know why more doll companies don't use this type of hair. It's so, it feels very expensive and luxurious. And I think that adds to her feeling like that kind of expensive doll to put up on a shelf and just think, wow, look at that beautiful antique I have, even though she's only, well, I guess this one's antique. She's like 30 years old, right? Around there. I'm not doing math right now. So I hope I've said a lot about Addy, because she is very important, because she was the first Black American Girl character. And there's a big legacy behind her, and I can see why she has as much love as she does. And yes, I think I'm satisfied for now. If I think about more, I'll just add it in later. So let me get to the next doll, release-wise, not chronological. See, because chronologically, Cecile would be before Addy. Her story takes place in 1853, almost over a decade earlier, because Addy's 1864. And she came out in 2011, so 18 years after Addy was first introduced. And so what I was saying before about Addy's story dealing with a lot of trauma, I'm assuming because of those feelings that people think it shouldn't always be about Black trauma in their stories, that may be why Cecile's story is almost in ways opposite. Because she grew up in Louisiana as a daughter of a Black wealthy family. So her story is very different. She has a best friend, because I don't have Marie Grace, but she's sold as like a companion doll. They're sold as a duo, but Marie Grace's story comes first chronologically in the order of their books. So I don't have that book to have read through it at all. So I don't know what happens in it. But I know that she teaches, she's very educated and has a lot of expectations on her. I don't know why I jumped right into the story. I want to talk about the dolls first, but anyway, let me get it out of the way. So she, like I said, she is educated and she is actually teaching Marie Grace how to speak French. I have Addy's hair in my ear. That's what was itching me. She's actually, because she's educated and Marie Grace's story, I believe she spent a lot of time moving around, not being settled. So she's lost a lot of her French. So she's someone who has a lot more expectation on her and, raised to be the prissy little beauty she is. Because now let me talk about the doll. I actually don't need to say much about her story. There's not as much of a legacy behind it. But the doll the doll herself, very pretty, very unique. So I have the second Cecile. So the second wave had a different wig. So if she doesn't look correct, if she looks different to you, that's why. But she's got these beautiful, almost black ringlets, but with some red into it as well. And she's got these striking hazel eyes, the decal hazel eyes. And then I think she's got I'm peeking over at Addy. I think they've got about the same skin tone, but as I said, they're different batches, different manufacturing times. They just don't always look the same. But I believe she would be the skin tone 30. I'm peeking at all my other dolls to see what she looks like. And she unfortunately was retired. She and Marie Grace and their collections were retired, I think, in 2014. So they were only around for 3 years. They kind of shared a collection as far as I could tell. I don't have a lot from it because my favorite outfit from her is this, but there's another one I like about the same. And so I just never felt the need to chase her collection at all. The doll is expensive, okay? I bought her on the secondary market, new in box as far as I could tell. And so she's just not an easy doll to track down, either her or her pieces, from her collection. And I don't know if I'm that fascinated with the 1850s Louisiana anyway, that I would feel the need to have it, but it is nice to know that they went a different direction with her. Because as I said, it doesn't always have to be a black, black history doesn't always have to be about black trauma. And so hers is a bit more, black excellence, in my opinion, because she's living in a place and time where black people are business owners and they are freed. I think in the book they refer to them as freed people of color. And so her story is just a very big juxtaposition to Addy's, who, if you look at the timeline, Addy, who would be a baby if I don't even know what year she would be born, if she would either be a baby or about to be born and about to go through a very different experience from Cecile. So when you think about their stories and their timelines together, that's dark. I don't want to think about that. But anyway, the doll herself is very beautiful. And like I said, I wanted to focus mostly on the dolls and just talk a little bit about the legacy. It's just unfortunate that I don't think Cecile has all that much of a legacy aside from being sought after because she wasn't on the market for very long. And her original doll, what I said about the curls, they weren't as ringlety. They were more like thicker sausage curls. So that's what looks different about her wig. But even though, if you look at her on the cover, the original Cecile wig looked more accurate to the character, but I actually prefer this as a doll wig because it's just a very classic, cute, adorable, timeless looking wig. And wow, that was really fast. So let me get to the next girl. The next character released is a fun one. She came out in 2016. This is obviously Melody beside me. And her story takes place in the 1960s. I'll try not to jump right into the story this time because I love the doll. And what I mentioned earlier with Addy is this was the first time I experienced, when I say experienced, we used to carry these in a store in Canada called Indigo, and they had some dolls out. I don't know if exposed is the right word, but just so that you can see them outside the box. And Melody was one of them. And so I remember going up to her wig and being like, does she have textured hair? Does she have hair like well, not like nobody's ever going to have, no dolls are going to have human hair at all, but very close to black human hair, if it's straight. And so I was just completely floored because the only Addy dolls I had seen up until that point, they had just been in a box or a picture, and we definitely didn't have any Addies in store. But even if they had, they would have been inside the box with a hairnet on. And the Addy mold dolls, the Truly Me Addy mold dolls, they had curly hair and it would have been in a hairnet, so I wouldn't have known anyway. But she was out and free, so I was able to get up close and see that she had this amazing wig that isn't just a beautiful texture, but it's really It's really fun to style because of that 60s flip. And like Cecile, which I probably forgot, I think I forgot to mention, they don't have an original mold. So they both have the Sonali mold, which was originally developed for a character who, I believe in her story, she was a Girl of the Year's friend doll, was developed. So I believe her character was half white and half Indian. So a multiracial character, biracial. So it wasn't originally an African American or a black mold like Addy's was and has forever remained. So going to talk more about the doll, she also has an incredible collection. I have a lot of her outfits and a lot of her, because of her story, a lot of her accessories are music themed. So she had like a studio, which I would never have because I almost bought it because it's a really cool piece, but it would just take up too much space. But I do have her piano and her microphone that actually plays. I'm not trying to make this all about the accessories. I do want to focus mostly on the dolls, but I'm kind of glancing over at where I keep all her stuff. And so she's another doll who I just could not stop buying her outfits. But luckily, I don't feel the same way I do about her as I do other dolls whose outfits I love, where I can change her and put her in different outfits for different seasons or just for different periods of time. And I'm satisfied enough. Oh, and maybe I should take off her glasses so you can actually see her. And the other thing about my Melody doll is she is the Be Forever version. And one of the distinctions that somebody pointed out to me is that she has the longer bangs. And I'm like, these are the longer bangs? What did the Not Be Forever version have? Because these are short to me. And so I think that's why people generally prefer the Be Forever version, because if these are longer bangs, I can't even imagine. It's like, I could just think of Scream 3, the Courtney Cox character, the Gail character. Is that what the Non-Be Forever Melody looks like? Maybe I've never even seen her. But anyway, she's got this beautiful, bright colored meat outfit that she comes with, and I've got her accessories on her as well. Let me put her glasses back on. You know, it is because the Sonali mold has been used a lot. I do find these differentiate her. Not that she looks like Cecile, for example, but there is a girl I'll bring up who does look quite a bit like Melody without the glasses, and now they're not going to go on, of course. And another big part of her story, as you can see with some of her accessories, aside from being she's a singer, think, I don't know, I know her outfit is called doo-wop outfit, so I guess she would be that kind of like 1960s singer. She's also into civil rights, the civil rights movement in the 1960s, which is another important part of Black history. And, you know, it deals with the trauma they were going through, but not as traumatic. And because of both the music and the civil rights movement going on, it does remind me of a movie I loved in the early 2000s, the musical version of Hairspray. I know the 80s version of Hairspray, but it's not, even though I liked it as a kid, it's not as obviously as fantastic as the musical version. So she just feels like someone who stepped right out of Hairspray, just because of her story and her look and her singing abilities. And what was weird is her story, because I was trying to look up like her movie and stuff like that too, because I know that there's differences between the book and the story. And the biggest difference is, if I understood correctly, the year. So her book takes place in 1964, the book that's right here. Oh yeah, so it says right on it, Be Forever Melody. And hers is really thick. So her book takes place in 1964, but then the movie, unless there's more than one movie, and I couldn't find, it said it took place in 1963. So is it a prequel? Did they do her movie as a prequel? But anyway, I should have mentioned in the beginning, I don't know if I made it clear, that I'm not big on their stories. I've read some of them, especially if the doll is, I feel a bigger connection with the doll itself, because I do kind of come up with stories myself, and then when I go and learn more about the story, I'm like, wow, I was way off. That's not the character I expected at all. And it's like I'm the opposite of a normal, I don't want to say a normal American Girl collector, but the average American Girl collector, is that a better way of saying it? Where most people see the dolls as companion pieces to the girl in the story. Like they see the character in the story as the main component, and the rest is just like merchandise that goes with it, as if like, you know, any other book or movie that has characters in it, then you're collecting what goes with the movie, not the other way around. I see it as like, you could see that as your doll story, but for her, I don't know. Her character's not that far off, but I'm just saying that that's why I don't always pay enough attention to the books. And so I probably said more than I expected to about Melody. It's just Addy who had the most to say about so far. So let me get to the next girl. Now, Gabriella beside me, she's someone whose legacy is definitely a lot bigger than her story. Not her fault, but should I jump right into that? No, let me go to the doll first, because for one thing, she's not even an original doll, but she's the Girl of the Year. of 2017, right? Yeah, yeah. And so anybody who knows anything about American Girl already knows everything I'm going to say. So I'll try to keep it kind of brief and just talk about the doll herself, which isn't, again, not very much to say. She's just truly me. I think I just said this. Truly me 46, who was repackaged as a Girl of the Year, named Gabriella, and everything was slapped together really fast. Her story, her outfit, her collection. But what I think is nice about that is, or I guess what I should say is I'm grateful about that is because I didn't collect American Girl yet, so I didn't experience everybody constantly asking for more representation and more diversity and just seeing different kinds of stories, different kinds of dolls and demanding it. And so by the time I came around to collecting American Girl, I think I probably is because of the diversity everyone demanded, is that as weak as her collection is, they slapped something together because obviously the original, when I say obvious, it was very obvious that the intended Girl of the Year was going to be Tenny. And because people had had enough and they were fed up with just seeing the same kind of stories hashed up over and over again, they were lip service. Is that what you call it? I don't even know if that's what lip service is. It's just something I hear when people talk about things that fans want. And so they just slapped together this doll. They just took a Truly Me doll who I think had just been retired. And so maybe that made them, maybe the American Girl had some left over, or they thought, hey, this makes her kind of special. You can't buy this Truly Me anymore, at least. And so she's a pretty doll. I don't know, I sound very disappointed the way I'm saying that, but I'm just saying, it's after having said all that, I feel like, how can I possibly make her sound really spectacular when she was already available just like a year before? She's got a nice curly wig, the ringlet curls. See, I had no intention to get this doll because I have a lot of Sonali mold dolls, but then somebody kind of local was selling her and I saw her in person and I was smitten with how pretty this particular Gabriella is. But there are issues I have with her design that are just unforgivable for my taste. And she has the worst, I don't know if it's going to pick it up on camera, but it's the angle. I can see it very, oh no, I did pull up her shirt. Anyway, let me pull down her shirt to show that she's got this, because a lot of her cloth body's showing, it's a bad match, color match to her face. And she's got a really wrinkly neck. So some of the dolls have this really wrinkly neck because of the way the cable ties are put in. And because of her outfit, it doesn't cover up a lot unless you pull it up in a certain way, which I had done. And then I use her hair to cover the rest of her cloth body, even though with doing that, it doesn't accomplish enough. So she's definitely not among my favorites, but it's for those purposes. Like, she's of course a cute doll because they're all cute. And she has a great wig, and she's a third Sonali mold I brought up in a row. So it's funny how that particular mold ended up becoming more of used more for black dolls or black characters, African American or black characters. And the mold has changed too. I don't think any of the dolls, no, none of the dolls I have will show the newer version of the mold. So it did evolve over time too. So she's another one I don't have a lot to say about. Her story is like all the Girl of the Year. Like all the Girl of the Year dolls, her story is very basic. She's a dancer. Is she into gymnastics too? I don't read the books, like I said. But I know what they did to make her at least a little bit unique. She has a stutter, and she enjoys writing poetry, and she uses speaking poetry to help her with her stutter, and she finds it because it makes her more comfortable speaking in public. I don't know how that would. Having to memorize a poem and say it publicly when I have a stutter sounds like a lot, but I don't have any of those things, so maybe that's why I don't understand. So her outfit is cute, aside from the fact of what it does to the body. I like her color scheme. I don't really like her outfit, her wardrobe, because so much of it is showing off that body. And like I said, she has the worst one. So I repurposed her in my collection to give her something that would cover her up completely, a nightgown. And so I think her legacy is important, like I said, because people were constantly demanding American Girl do more to represent more in their doll line. And so far, she's the only Black Girl of the Year they've released. And as I already mentioned, and everybody already knows, she wasn't really a Girl of the Year. She didn't really get that kind of treatment. And so I just feel like that's her legacy. And this is someone who came into collecting after this had all happened. So that's my take, almost like as an outsider. That's my like objective opinion. Whereas I think the people who who fought for it and they were there while it happened, they probably have a bigger connection with her, and they're probably, I mean, I hope they're happy that they got, you know, I hope they're happy they got something, but of course we could always get more. And they've made attempts at diversifying. So this isn't supposed to be about that. This is supposed to be about the Black history. So let me stick with Gabriella. Very cute doll. I don't love her collection, but I know she has her fan base. I know people really love her, so that's good. Especially anybody who missed out on Trinity 46 must really love her, I guess. So I think I said more than I could have about thought I could have about her. So let me just move on to the next. I think it's girls this time. Yeah, let me move on to the next girls. These next two girls are wonderful dolls with cute stories, but I think their legacy is sort of bigger than the actual stories that come in their books. McKenna, she was the first, she introduced the McKenna mold, obviously, and this is Yvette, who is just another Josefina. I say another because there have been a lot of Josefina mold dolls over the last, especially over the last few years, as I got heavily into collecting. I'm just going to kind of bring them forward so you can look at them. So they're from the World by Us line, in case I didn't make that clear at all. And that came out in 2021, so the middle of the pandemic. And so the pandemic kind of, it works into McKenna's stories. Let me start with her story because it's a little bit simpler. She's sort of like a fashion influencer, and she got her start, her breakaway as a fashion influencer during the pandemic. And then she's going back to school, and now she's connecting with people. I don't know if it sounds like they're her followers, but I guess they become her friends. It's cute. It sounds like a very cute story, but I don't read the stories. I just kind of took the Sparks notes so that I would know what to talk about. And the doll is wonderful. When I say the doll is wonderful, I'm not crazy about the eye placement of the doll, but I think the face is very cute. The mold is very cute. And I love the wig. It's a textured wig with a unique hairstyle, these twists that we've never seen again. But I haven't taken out one of the wigs yet. I've never taken out her wig, but I've heard that it has the same texture that I was talking about before. And she's got great clothing pieces, not crazy about the shoes, just because I don't like molded plastic shoes, and that's all they are, with a little ribbon strap. But she's got this, I don't know if you would call this gradient. It's kind of like a gradient skirt, but it's really nice. And you can see that she knows fashion. And what they use for fake leather, it makes them stand like it's so hard to get her arms to come down. And it's never going to settle. I've had this jacket for a while, and it's just, that's as close as I can get her arms to her body. And cute purse. She's meat outfit and accessories, and she's just wearing the meat outfit, and I normally don't have her in this. But there is a third character, but she's not Black, so I'm not including her in this. And now let me move over to Yvette, because there's a little bit more to say about Yvette, especially with her legacy, and I guess World by Us in general, because World by Us was clearly another response to fans and collectors asking for more diversity and asking for more representation in their offerings. And so I think this was a good jumping off point, and I think they had a lot more planned. There was 3 dolls, some play sets, some fashions, not very many fashions, but a couple, and they're very hard to find because I feel like they didn't sit on shelves for very long. I've only seen the third doll, Maritza's her name. I'm acting as if she's some secret. I've only seen Maritza's outfits, her camo outfit on still available in stores by the time I started collecting. So they have great fashions that it's like, good luck if you ever see it. People are going to want a fortune for it because they're really nice. But now, more about Yvette. So Yvette is a special character because she's biracial. She's half Black and half white. Her mom's side of the family is Black. Her dad's side of the family is white. And her story is, she's a nature lover and she's a thrifter. So she's kind of into vintage clothing, I guess. I understand that they say it's vintage. This doesn't feel all that vintage, but for the record, I have her sitting in Julie's world, so she's usually very vintage looking, especially compared to this. So she has this hippie-ish kind of vibe, let's say, and so she's on this mission to find out why her Black side of her family doesn't talk to her white side of her family. Her new friends help her, and the reason I want to talk more about her legacy is because when they started this world, or when they announced this World by Us, I don't know if there were leaks of her aesthetic not being quite so taking after her father's side, let's say, more than her mother's side. And that's saying like her skin tone is very light. It's a medium, but it's like on the lighter side of the medium. She's got freckles and gray eyes and pretty blonde hair. Like pretty, meaning as in like it's pretty much blonde. It's pretty too, but I just meant like it's quite blonde. And so when you look at her, you wouldn't necessarily know unless someone told you that she's biracial, that she's half black, half white. But then there were some images that leaked of who looks like this character, but with a more melanated skin and deeper hair color, and I think darker eyes, maybe even shorter hair. And for whatever reason, whatever reasons, we don't know what it is, they more made her, like I said, reflect her father's side of the family. And I understand, like, I can understand the frustrations there and why people were like, why couldn't you just give us, an actual, not that she's not POC, and I'm not saying my own feelings here, but the people were just more frustrated that they asked for, it's like, it was like so close, you know what I mean? But they still had to go in and make a blonde doll with a blonde hair, light-eyed doll for this POC collection. That, like I said, seemed like it was supposed to continue. There have even been rumors that Covey is part of it, but then they made her a Girl of the Year. I don't know, maybe it didn't sell. I'm really not sure. Maybe they just didn't want to put as much into it as they do at other doll lines, other collections. But the thing I'll say, why I like Yvette, I like the way she looks, and even though I'll say, because my nieces are half black and half white, but the reverse, so the mom, my sister, is white and their dad is black, and for sure anybody could look like this. My nieces don't, so they don't reflect, even though they're the same mix, kind of the same mix, just reverse parents as my nieces. I would never think to get this doll for my biracial. A side note, my nieces always laugh at me when I say biracial because they prefer the term mixed. So it's like, I feel like kids going by mixed, it feels like we went full circle, because when I was a kid, my friends who were half black and half white preferred mixed over biracial. Then I had to learn to say biracial, and now when I'm around my nieces, I have to try to remember to say mixed again, because I'm like, what do we call it? So you just, I don't know, code switch for however people prefer. And so what I was saying is, I wouldn't get this doll to represent my nieces, even though she was designed to represent girls like my nieces. But still, she's a very pretty doll, and I think I would, I think my niece would love her. She just wouldn't see herself in her. But I do still think that there are kids who, they could be different mixes, or they could be different, just a different ethnicity altogether, who she looks like. So she is a very pretty doll, and so is McKenna. And The World by Us was a great idea. And the stories are cute from the Sparks notes I took. Because like I said, I like to impose my own personalities and stories on the dolls. They're my dolls, I can do what I want, right? But I was trying to like learn a little bit about them before I started this video crash course. But anyway, I think these were good dolls to talk about. And am I getting near the end? Am I getting to who I saved for last, the best? I think so. So let me get her, because obviously I'm going to be really excited to talk about Claudie. So I'm back with American Girl's very best, and I'm not just talking about for this video, I mean in general. Claudie, for me, obviously, I'm talking personal taste here. She is the best American Girl has ever offered. I'm laughing because people out there who have seen my videos know that I feel this way. But I only have, I know I said I would only have I wouldn't have this many dolls on the screen. I could have done a lot more. I have enough Claudie dolls for every outfit that's been released for her collection. So I think I just want to jump right in with the doll, and then I'll talk a little bit more about her legacy and her story after. Because this doll is, I've said this, I don't know how many times, people are gonna like exit out of this video, but she's the first doll that got me into American Girl. And her face is just so precious. She still has those jarring things that I mentioned before, with the, being big and having those two buck teeth. But there was just something about her face that immediately screamed like how sweet she was. She just really stood out among all the American Girl dolls I looked at. And at the time I came across her in a store, I didn't know she was new, so I wondered how I had never noticed her before, and why maybe she just grew on me. But it wasn't. It was a love at first sight when it comes to the Claudie doll and the mold. And so she's got such an amazing meat outfit. I love the sort of mint color of her cardigan, right? And this gingham. I think people think it's striped, but if you look close, I'm bringing her back. You're welcome. It's gingham. She's kind of a cross between like Dorothy from Wizard of Oz and Shirley Temple with this beautiful wig. And just everything about her, she's the only doll whose collection I have complete. I'm looking around to make sure, no, I am missing some pieces of Courtney. So yeah, she's the only doll I've completed, and just had to have everything as she came out. Wondering if I need to say anything more about the doll, because I do want to talk a little bit about her story. She's got a really cute character. She's someone who's living in Harlem during the 1920s. She's in a rooming house. I think that's what you call it, like a building where I think they're on the verge of being kicked out. It's been a while since I read the book, but I should have. I think I was trying to rely too much on my memory to see if I could, but now that I'm recording, I'm getting a little like antsy. And she's someone who doesn't really know where her strengths are, so she's trying out all these different things and throughout the story, which is a cute thing to witness. And she just comes across as very lovable and very, I know she's only like 10 or 11, but she, trying to figure herself out, trying to figure out life at such a young age. And so because of that, she comes with some great pieces in her collection, like a big bakery that's a lot of fun and beautiful to display. And she's got her bed is nice. These are her pajamas. She doesn't have not a single one of her outfits would reach my top 10 favorite outfits, sadly, but she definitely has a perfect collection for me. It's just not big enough because I don't know. She came out in 2022. We got a quick little mini release for the following summer, I think it was, so 2023, and bupkis ever since. But it's probably for the better for me, because if they came out with 5 more outfits, I would have needed 5 more dolls, and then I would have needed to find space for 5 more Claudie dolls. And so back to the book, there's this really interesting thing. So it's written by an author named Britt Bennett, right? I was making sure I'm saying it correctly. And so, as I just said, the book because the doll came out in 2022, but in 2020, so September of 2020, Britt Bennett actually sent out a tweet at American Girl saying, make a Black character historical doll from the 90s and let me write it. You know what? Actually, I got the tweet down in front of me. Yeah, and let me write it. So she said to set a doll in the 90s and let her write it. And she ended up writing, well, I mean, obviously they would have seen the tweet, and it's not a coincidence that she ended up writing the next Black historical doll, who is Claudie. Well, I'm sorry, I'm reading her name as I'm like looking at the back, but I know her name. And so that's such an amazing thing that happened, that this author got her wish. I mean, she didn't get the 90s, but because they did do the 90s. Oh, wow, I didn't realize that. It's almost like the 90s dolls who stole her spotlight by being released only a year later. Okay, that's kind of weird. But regardless of that, she is definitely everything about her. It's like I keep bringing her forward because, listen, if you haven't seen the video, just in case you never know, so what's really magical about Claudie is she has dark brown decal eyes. And so I'm trying to bring her up close enough that you can see the details of them, because when I first got the doll, I just saw this extra sparkle in her eyes, how I used to describe it. And I just thought, that's such a weird thing to think by looking at these dolls. I have so many dolls by the time I collected more that have brown eyes, but there was something special about her and I didn't know that was a thing. And I think McKenna, I forgot to mention with McKenna that she and McKenna have this skin tone 35, which is so far the deepest skin tone from American Girl. And of course, she's Claudie, so she introduced the Claudie mold. And there have been 3 dolls. Now I'm turning this into all about Claudie. I'm just ending it on the perfect note, that's all. And her wig is, I didn't want to mention Claudie yet when I was talking about Cecile, but Cecile has a somewhat similar style of wig. It's just not hers is blacker than Cecile's wig. But I think that's probably why I like the Cecile wig, the second wig, the one that I have, because it reminds me of Claudie, who is what? Perfect. And it wouldn't be right if I, talked about Claudie and being from the 1920s and didn't mention part of the reason I love her so much. And I will bring over another doll, another American Girl doll who's also named, so she belongs here. Her name is Tiana, but she's obviously not an official American Girl doll, but she was made with the Claudie mold. And big part of the reason I fell in love with Claudie as a character is because their stories kind of align in a way. Her story takes place in New Orleans, which is where Cecile's story takes place. So it's all coming together, you see, because this is my favorite Disney princess and I'm a big collector of her. And so when I first had Claudie, until Tiana came out, she was sort of like, I actually had her displayed in my Tiana collection because I had convinced myself she was like, American Girl did Tiana. And then I was right, because lo and behold, she did end up coming out as Tiana a couple years later. Yes, 2024 she came out, so that would be 2 years later, yes. And might as well bring her forward, why not? Because she has the other decal eyes, which I'm so sorry for everyone who watches my videos. You must be so sick of me talking about this. But she has my favorite eyes, which is the light brown decal. And just a little quick thing, this isn't going to be the last time I talk about Tiana this month, and not just because it's, or no, it is a little bit because it's this month, is she's the first Black Disney princess. So it's also important to include her in this too, because she's, I believe Asha from Wish is Black, but I haven't seen the movie, so I could be wrong. It's just when I look at her aesthetically, she looks like a Black character with the braids and just the elevated features. And so even if she's not the only Black princess anymore, she's still the first Disney Black princess. And so having her uh, be turned into an American Girl doll when, like I said, this was my substitute Tiana for the longest time, because even her pajama set being yellow, she had yellow nightgown in the movie, and so her colors were like blue and green, which were Tiana's colors, and then her when they were first promoting the movie in 2009 when the Princess and the Frog came out, the accent color in all the promos was purple. So it's like, how does Claudie have all these colors? Are you telling me you're not putting this in my face right now? Like, she is Tiana, and then she is Tiana. So that's why I'm really excited always to show them together and talk about them every time, anytime, any chance I get. And I think I will have more to say about Tiana a little bit later in another video, I mean, and not an American Girl video. So that I probably gave you a lot, but just so you know, the dress, it's beautiful. I love with how they did the design. They added this mesh part up here to cover the body, to make it both more child appropriate and to cover that cloth body. But other than that, the outfit displays beautifully. It is cheap to touch and cheap to listen to, which I also like to mention every time I talk about Tiana. So I think that's all the girls. Let me bring them all in just to say goodbye. I hope no one out there is too disappointed that I didn't go all that deep into their stories. The truth is, because I'm not that invested in their stories myself, I'm not really the right person to do that. But I did try to provide very basic elements of their stories just so I had something to talk about that I didn't sound totally ignorant. Because I'm a doll collector first, pretty obvious. And so I wanted to talk about how much I love the dolls as dolls, and then a little bit more about their legacy, which I hope makes sense, just because I'm a little bit more interested in that, like how the history has been and how collectors have felt about certain things throughout the years, and to show off how pretty and cute they all are. So hopefully that was enough of information, and hopefully you enjoyed at least seeing the dolls. And for whatever case, thanks for hanging out with me again, and I will see you soon in the next one.